After elation at the Kohl Center on Friday night, absolute heartbreak at Camp Randall after a close defeat to the top-ranked Oregon Ducks. It's time for a quarterback change. I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective. Woo-hoo! Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, the Badgers suffered a crushing defeat last night at the hands of Dillon, Gabriel, and the number one ranked Oregon Ducks. We get into how good the defense played and how awful we looked at the most critical position on the field. Where do the Badgers go from here? And will we get to the coveted 7 wins? While we had a sad Saturday night, we had an incredible Friday night as Greg Gard notched a huge win on the Badgers' resume when they took down the mighty Arizona Wildcats in what was truly a convincing early season victory. How on earth did this team put up 103 points? Is Justin ready to say we will make the tournament? We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It'll help out the show quite a bit. And we always appreciate all the support. Justin, coming in this weekend, we had a lot of excitement. We were playing the 9th ranked Arizona Wildcats. We were playing the top ranked Oregon Ducks. It was a bittersweet. I called the show Bittersweet Weekend because that's what it was. Friday night was absolutely electric. Saturday night was soul crushing. If we had a quarterback with a pulse, we would have won that game. Mm-hmm. It was really, really bad. I mean, there's so many good things. We're going to get into the whole game. There's so many positives to talk about in that game, and we have to talk about them because the defense played an incredible game against an amazing Oregon team. I told you that line was fishy, and all of you that listen to me and bet on Wisconsin, I'm telling you, there was no chance that 97% of people were going to win a bet. It doesn't happen. Yeah. It's not how casinos were built. I took Wisconsin. I got about a 3-0 yesterday in my picks. You should check that out. Justin, how are you? How are you feeling after a good win on Friday and, frankly, a bit of a shitty day on Saturday?
I'd feel a lot better if I knew what recruiting news was coming out of this weekend, because that's kind of that's the silver lining to this is the recruits got to see an absolutely amazing game on Saturday night. We didn't come out on the side of it that we would like, but the team showed one of the biggest takeaway from this is we've had people kind of questioning Fickell and whether or not this team wants to play for him and wants to be, under this coach. That right there is exactly what you expect to see from a team that believes in their coach still. Mm-hmm. We didn't see that under Paul Chryst when we were getting boat raced against Illinois, and it looked like the team just flat out quit. This team is playing its butt off. Now, there's some obvious warts that need to be addressed.
Well, not against Iowa now. Iowa was a different one. We didn't do that against Iowa.
No, we did not. Absolutely not. But some of the same warts that we've had all season long showed in that game too. I mean, that was a stylistic issue game, Iowa. And there's some things that are going to need to be addressed. But the way I look at this game is we saw it as about as good as we could expect from the defense, bar another turnover or two, which, let's be honest, you're not likely to get against Dillon Gabriel. He's just not going to have multiple turnovers against you. He's way too efficient of a quarterback. So Wisconsin does not have a dominant enough defense to expect to go in there and force him into multiple mistakes. And he's not a quarterback you want to take risks against. I'm fine with getting pressure on him. I'm not fine with letting loose and just sending the house, because if somebody misses, he's a guy that can run 50 yards.
Unless you have Xavier Lucas that's making the play, because he'll make the right play.
Boy,
he only had 9 snaps
for a true freshman.
He only had 9 snaps yesterday, which I was surprised to see, which is unfortunate. But listen, my overall thoughts on this game were it's crushing. I'm going to put up a comment. I think you might have started, but Zach Bart said it right. He says, we need to find a way to win these, but we wanted a solid showing for recruits and we got it. Basketball throttled Zona, and those on AMOV saw both games. Great weekend and atmosphere for recruits to be at. we have to find a way to win these. It's really difficult to lose another game against a ranked team, but I mean, pretty much everybody, except for those that bet on the right side of the line, thought we were going to get throttled. And the fact that we didn't, the fact that we were in the game, I was actually watching the game with my neighbor who was in Oregon.
Let's take a second here, though. You bet on the right side of that. What was your prediction for score?
It was 31-20. I definitely thought we were gonna lose, but I thought it was gonna be close because the line said it was gonna be close, and I've said that all week. I was very consistent about it, but there's so much good to take away from it. Like the defense, we talked so much about
game I've seen from this staff.
Yeah, we talked so much about Tressel and whether Tressel should be out with Longo and whether Longo should be out, all this stuff. But boy, that defense showed up. And it wasn't just how well they played, it was how well it was called. And I have to give Tressel flowers, and we're going to get into that when we get to that defense section. But overall, I'm not that upset because we played a really good team, 16-13 at home. We were in the game. We were up in the fourth quarter. Like, we don't have a good quarterback. And when you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to win games like this. So my view is we take the positives, we move from it, and we need to now really look at a change offensively, which we're going to talk about. I'm feeling okay about it because I didn't expect to win. I'm furious that we couldn't close it out. But in the end, if you look back at the end of the season, we're happy that we were in this game. We said we want to compete with these teams. We just competed with the best team in the country. On the other side, which we're going to get into our second section of the show, basketball, freaking fantastic. I'm just so excited about what's to come on the basketball side. Let's start with some offense. I'm going to put up some offense stats here because it was pretty bleak, but we have to talk about it. Actually, let me put up the game stats first. The game stats, yikes. I'm going to highlight two numbers here. So first of all, the turnover margin was 0. We each had a turnover. Rushing yards per carry, we were 3.8. Oregon, 3.4. Unbelievable job by the defense to keep them to a 3.4 yards per carry.
Not to mention that their quarterback had a chunk play too.
Yeah, absolutely. Third down efficiency was horrific. 1 of 12 for us, 5 of 15 for them. Defense, again, played well. We only had 96 passing yards, a shocker. And here's the big stat. Passing yards per attempt, 3.4 for the Badgers and 7 for the Ducks. To going over some offensive involvement here. There it is. Braedyn Locke, 12 of 28 for 96 yards, 3.4 yards per attempt. Tawee Walker, good game, 20 carries, 97 yards, 4.9 yards per carry. The heavy targets were Will Pauling and Vinny Anthony. Vinny Anthony had 4 receptions, though, for 53 yards. We did get KBJ got a couple of targets, but did not get any catches yesterday. Justin, let's just ask the big question first. Is it time for Mabry to come in and be the quarterback of this team?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think you can do any worse than what we saw from Locke this last game, and he seems to be regressing and continuing to get worse and worse. What is the worst possible outcome that you could have from playing Mabry at this point? It's not like he just walked on campus 2 weeks ago. This is a kid that should have been getting heavy reps for the last 6 weeks as the backup, and he should be ready to go. Like, I'm not expecting him to go out there and throw for 300 yards. I'm expecting him to go out there and hopefully be over 50% completion. And if he can get 200 yards passing, I'll be happy. But really, at this point, if he's not capable of coming in and at least being spot duty, then you clearly missed on a recruit. Because at this point, I expect him to be able to be at least competent enough to run the watered down version of this offense and run it effectively.
I mean, I think where I'm at with this is I want the quarterback that gives us the best chance to win to play. And I know that's kind of a silly answer, but like, I care about these wins. Nebraska, Minnesota is a game nobody wants to lose. That axe, we want to keep that axe. So I'm all for a change at quarterback because I do believe that Braedyn Locke just simply cannot do this. Yeah. And he's regressing. He's not getting better. He's actually going the other direction, which is just not. So it's very surprising. I know he's had a very tough stretch of games. These last 3 games are against very good opponents, but I mean, I'm sorry. That's just not that. Now, if the coaches truly believe that Locke gives you a better chance to win, and Mabry is not even at Locke's level yet, then don't play him because I want to win these games. But I would hope, as you said, that Mabry could be better because it can't get much worse, Justin. 12 of 20.
Well, he at least has mobility. Like, you can do some things with him to make some easier reads that you can't do with Locke. In worst case, if it's not there, he can run. Like, we have nothing that Locke, no redeeming quality. If the pass play isn't there, he's just toast. And he doesn't have a good enough arm. His decision-making is horrible. Like, it kind of was astounding to me when we saw the stat in the game where they said Oregon was like top 5 in the country for deflections and was only 11. And I sat there and thought about how many more than that Locke has had, and he didn't even play the whole season. Like, he's legitimately got to be at 15 plus, right?
I mean, at least.
He had at least 2 or 3 last night. And it's the issue, why it's concerning is he doesn't manipulate himself around these situations. He tries to throw through guys. Like, that last interception happened because he threw directly at the guy rather than taking a step to the right or left and throwing around the person.
I mean, we've said this for weeks. It's like, why? And it's got to. The thing that frustrates me is why is that not changing? Like, it's sliding to find passing lanes. Passing lanes is something that you learn very early on.
It's what Russell Wilson did amazingly. It's and like you'd think he'd have it in his head, given that
you have to find the lane to pass it. You can't just see the guy and throw it. You got to know what's in between you and the guy, right? And I think it's very difficult to watch because, like, you can see that the reads are there. Oftentimes, like, he's seeing it, but he can't make the throw, and he can't make the throw effectively. Now, look, the one throw to Vinny Anthony, that was absolutely a dime, absolute dime. The problem is that's one throw in the whole game. And I mean, when you have a 12 for 28 completion percentage, I just don't know. I want to see Mabry, but I also just want to win those last 2 games. And I know that might not be a popular opinion. People might say, listen, I want Mabry. I don't care what happens. I want to beat Nebraska, and I definitely want to beat Minnesota. 7 wins means something to me. It means that we can keep our sort of maintain where we've been as a solid high floor team, which I really like. That being said, I mean, I've never had less confidence in a Badger offense scoring a touchdown ever than I did last night. Like, when they went for that ridiculous, stupid fake field goal and all we needed was 3 points, I'm like, we're not going to get there. Like, there's just no way that Braedyn Locke can be the guy that can line up with one drive to go to tie or win a game and actually execute that. I mean, right? That's how it feels. It just doesn't feel like he can actually make those plays.
Oh, absolutely. Like, listen, part of the issue that I saw, and this is why I get so frustrated when people talk about it, there were routine throws that he missed on. Like the throw to Tawee Walker where he was running into the end zone, it doesn't get easier than that as a quarterback. The guy was wide open and uncovered. Like, all you had to do was give him a chance. And then the same thing with Pauling on the slant where he had his man beat. I think it was the same drive. He throws it behind him. And it's like, and that has become a regular occurrence with him where he's consistently behind receivers in his accuracy.
Yeah.
And that's what it would have happened on the one it should have happened on the one that was almost picked too earlier in the game where he threw right at the guy, but it was also still behind the receiver. Like, he's got a terrible habit of his just not being able to anticipate where guys are going to be.
Tyler Schreiber says Dan Lanning doesn't do the fake field goal if we have a competent QB. I don't think. Yeah, I agree. My issue with Dan Lanning's call, by the way, which is to me is crazy. I have no problem with Dan Lanning wanting to go for it on 4th down. Then just go for it.
Yeah.
Why are you lining up on the field goal? Like that's not the best way for you to get that first down. If you're Dan Lanning, I would have. I mean, obviously, I'm glad that they missed that, but if you're gonna do that, then you must just go
5 yards.
It's just weird to do that play there. I mean, I understand not wanting to go up 6 because like it just puts it automatically means that you're going for a touch on the other side. And I understand that logic, but then just, go run an actual play, not that. Justin, who are you happy with on this offense? Is there anything that you're like, that you can take from yesterday's game and say, all right, because we're going to talk defense and there's a lot of positives there, but is there anything you can hang your hat on offensively yesterday?
I thought Tawee played well. There were a couple of runs that I felt like he left some yardage on the field. A couple of times where it's just like I was waiting for him to turn upfield and show some burst, and it just never came. But for the most part, he ran hard and he had great vision. I thought Dupree showed some things yesterday. He's kind of hit or miss, but he's doing a much better job of being able to kind of knife through holes and ran between the tackles fairly well yesterday. I think Vinny Anthony is just a consistent guy at this point. Like every week, he seems to do something positive. Honestly, I don't know what to really say about the offense here because so much of why certain guys didn't look good was as a result of poor quarterback play. It's like there was a lot to be out there. Like guys were open. He just did a horrible job of throwing football.
It's so upsetting to have to watch that and realize that we were that close to beating a team like that with what we had at quarterback, which is beyond frustrating. But yeah, I agree with you. Vinny Anthony continues to show. Tawee Walker did run hard, I think, overall, and I'll give it to the line too. I mean, I think the line played fairly well against an extremely good defensive front in Oregon. That's a great team right there. That's a team that beat Ohio State. They haven't lost. They just clinched a trip to the Big Ten championship game. They are the real deal. And there's not a lot else to point to, but you're right. It all kind of centers around the quarterback. We got a Twitter comment from Bill Woj, our good friend, who asked a question. Would you give Longo another year?
Before we jump into that.
Yeah.
Was there not a more fitting way for this to end, given the fact of what we've seen from him as a quarterback, that a batted ball for an interception is how it ends? It's exactly what you'd expect from Locke to do something awful like that.
And of course, like right before the drive, it was actually the drive before, they were like, the announcers were like, well, the one thing he hasn't done today is throw an interception. I'm like, well, don't worry. Yeah. We'll
give him time.
This game is not ending without him throwing a pick. And yes, it was just like he threw it right to the guy and at the tip. It's like, man, yeah. And how many picks have there been like that? It's like he throws them so low. He doesn't have the ability to do it very well. Bill Woj asks, would you give Longo another year? I know he's been successful, obviously meant at other places, but I've never seen in-game adjustments. That tells me even with a plus quarterback, he wouldn't be able to win the big games. Justin, where are you at on Longo?
I'm out on him. I at this point, I think they need somebody that brings a more, what's the word I'm looking, diverse run game. Like I think they need to be able to. The biggest takeaway I had from Iowa and against some of these other games where we've struggled to run the football, I just don't think the run game is overly complex. And I think teams are really that have the ability to be physical are doing a good job of blowing it up on us. And that is a problem. I think we need to be able to find somebody who's capable of throwing some deception into the running game because I think that will aid the passing game significantly. Now, I want nothing to do with going back to where we were, but I think there's a balance to be had there where you find a run game. Like I think what Wisconsin is always going to be is if you can find a diverse run game where you have the ability to be somewhat dynamic in the run game and you can have a competent quality passing game that's still close to a 50-50 split, I think that's exactly where you want to be. Like I don't think we don't need an offense that we want to go out there and throw the ball 40 times a game. That's not going to work here. Mm-hmm. But we can be where it's kind of like 2011 where there's a little bit of everything that you're able to do, and it's a problem for teams to be able to key in on one thing and stop you.
When I think of Longo, there have been times in his tenure at Madison where I'm like, okay, this might actually work. Like he does, we do things that we haven't done in the past. We throw the ball deep. We've thrown the ball deep quite a bit this year, which I do like. It's the only thing I really like about what I've seen from him this year. But we don't really have an identity. We don't really have the creativity, as you mentioned. And I agree with everything you said. I'm out. I'm absolutely out on Longo. I don't care what happens in the next two games because we're going back to opponents like we saw in that 3-game stretch. They're better than that. They're not as bad as those 3 teams, but we should be able to get some victories. Fair, very fair. And I would like to see Longo have some success, but I don't think this is the path forward. I think that to me is about as clear as it gets. Like when I think about the future of this Wisconsin program, when I think about the recruits that we've got in, and we are going to talk about the recruiting this weekend, there's a lot of positives to look at from a recruiting perspective. This isn't the way forward. Longo's offense is just not effective enough in the conference. And I know that people say, well, he needs the talent, he needs the quarterback. Okay, well, we don't have the quarterback. And does anyone think we're going to have that great quarterback next year either? I mean, maybe we get someone in the portal. Maybe it's Mabry. Like, we don't have that coming up, which means you have to have an offense that can do what Wisconsin used to do, which is without elite quarterback play, we can actually still be an effective offense and move the ball, which we cannot do right now. And that's beyond frustrating. So
that's where the issue lies for me, because we're not going to rate this offense about whether it will work against teams like Northwestern and Rutgers and Purdue. It's whether it can be effective against Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan when they're up, Penn State. It has to at least be functional. Like, we need to be able to, even when we're not our best version, be able to score 20 points on these teams. And we can't do it. And I don't care. Like, I realize it's a struggle. There were guys open yesterday. Part of it's on the quarterback play. But guess who brought that quarterback in? This QB room was built by him. This was his golden boy that he wanted on this team. I have seen nothing that fits what he said about what Braedyn Locke is, which is this super intelligent, knows the playbook so well, everything. It's like, he makes a lot of really dumb decisions to me in the moment for somebody who you're saying is, ahead of everybody from an intellectual standpoint, because he's consistently not ineffective at quarterback. And a lot of the decisions I look at, I'm like, he clearly doesn't see the defender, which means that he's either not manipulating the play the way it's meant to be done, or he flat out just does not understand what he's looking at. Like the pick against Iowa. When I watched that, in the moment, I'm like, what are you doing?
I feel like I often just look at the television and say, what are you doing? Every time I watch that man play. KPB, good friend of the show, says Fickell has hitched his wagon to the OC. The inability to find a quarterback has really hurt this team. Now he may be starting over with a new OC next year with an even tougher schedule. I mean, that's the reality. You get rid of Longo, you are going to bring in someone new. It is a very, very difficult schedule. If you have not looked at the schedule next year obviously the dates aren't set, but who our opponents are, holy crap. We have Ohio State. We have Michigan. We have Alabama. We've got Iowa. I mean, we got Indiana. It is a brutal schedule next year.
Well, I mean, Michigan,
but they will look, they're going to find their way back. Like, they're not going into next season
without
if
Moore stays there, because I don't think they're going to be better next year. They're going to lose a lot of defensive talent.
That may be the case, but they're also going to get a quarterback. Like, that team is, well, I mean, who knows? Either way, it's still a game that I don't want. I mean, I don't want to see them on the schedule. Like,
it's a no-win situation, because if we lose it and they're not a good team, then it sucks. And if we win it, they're not a great team either way. So it's not really a big win.
Right.
What I will say is, I think people need to stop looking at what the results have been under Longo and assume that that's what a good offensive coordinator change brings. I think you can look at it that if you get the right pieces in, it's capable of being like I said, we don't have to have an offense that's off the charts. If they can get to 27, 28 points per game, that's a substantial difference for this team. And if it's just more functional and able to move the football, it'll be better. Like, I think with the right offensive coordinator, the running game can be far more consistent, which will open up some of the passing things in terms of being able to just simplify the passing game. And if you get a quarterback that's at least competent, then you can make some plays in the passing game where you don't have to, like, it's super boom bust right now. We either hit a long pass play and that's where we end up getting our one score, or he's completely ineffective to the point where we can't move the football down the field.
I was arguing with I was talking to my neighbor when he was here last night watching the game with me. Like, if we had TVD, like, this game, we win this game. Like, let's not forget that our starting quarterback tore his ACL in game 3, by the way. Like, it would have been it's a very different season, and we're still 5-5. This was a funny one. I like Robert Sorensen, another good friend of the show. Always take the over on the 2.5 batted balls per game. No doubt about that. Yeah. Let's move on to the defense.
Well, one last thing I want to say. Yep. The 2.5 batted balls. Is there ever a time you've seen it where you've looked at a guy's stat line, see him 12 of 28 for 1-1, and actually said, this actually makes him look better than how he actually played? He was actually worse than this. He has a fumble in that. He's got another ball that should have been picked, probably more than one. And I look at it and I'm just like, he actually played significantly worse than this. Like, he effectively killed this offense in this game.
Yeah. And look, I know that there's a lot of people that, like, you guys touched on it a little bit last night. There's certainly some comments like, well, you can't put it all on him. And that whole narrative. I'm like, well,
I think you can.
I think you kind of can, because
there were plays to be had. Receivers were open.
The defense played lights out yesterday. And of course, complimentary football. We talk about it so often.
The running game was solid.
100%. just brutal. Well, the defense did have a good day. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
Put up some of our typical stats here. Hunter Wohler, 12 tackles. Christian Alliegro, what a day. 10 tackles plus a tackle for loss. As a team, we had 5 tackles for loss yesterday. Again, great. Kurt Neal had a 1.5 tackles for loss and half a sack. John Pius had a tackle for loss and a sack. Xavier Lucas had half of a tackle for loss and a half of a sack. As far as percentage of snaps.
That's Lucas's sack.
Yeah,
I cleaned it up.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's still
the guy was still up when he took him down. So to me, that's his sack.
Only 4 defensive linemen played yesterday. Hills, Barton, Neal, and Johnson. Hills and Barton took the majority of the snaps. Really Neal as well. Alliegro, 86% of the snaps yesterday. He and Jake Chaney pretty much took all the snaps on the inside of the linebacking core. Outside, Peterson, Lowry, Pius, and Witt, pretty much a fairly even split. Peterson led with 53% of the snaps, and the rest just pretty clear from that. Of course, Hallman, Forkerin, Zachman, and Brown, and Wohler kind of dominating the defensive backs. Clearly, a lot of nickel played in this game yesterday. Anything jump off the page here, either in the stats, Justin, or the snap counts from the defense?
I thought Elijah Hills was incredible in this game. And it's good to see him out there fully getting the bulk of the snaps on defensive line now. And obviously Alliegro, it's good to see him out there. Now, I know Jaheim Thomas isn't at 100% right now, but Alliegro is playing his butt off. And his athleticism really stands out on the field. I'm glad they're getting him more opportunity, and it needs to continue because he's one of the few guys I look at that I feel like the offense is actively concerned with him, because he is kind of a little bit of a Tasmanian devil out there where he's just all over the place. And this defense needs more of those guys. Like if we had 2 or 3 guys with Allegro's type of versatility and ability to move around the field, this defense looks substantially better.
I mean, we said at the end of last year that we thought Alliegro, I mean, who shined last year and really came out out of nowhere and played well. We knew he was going to have a good year. And when you look again at these snap counts and you look at Alliegro throughout the year, early in the season, he was at 19, 10, 19%. And then the last 2 weeks, obviously with injury to Thomas, he's getting a bulk of the snaps. And that's what should have been frankly happening all year. Like he is a really interesting talent. He's very versatile, very quick. He's always been like that. And you're right about Elijah Hills. Absolute stud. I mean, without Elijah Hills, our D-line is considerably worse this season. He really has made an impact. I also want to just say, I don't really know what happened to Hunter Wohler at the end. I hope he's okay. That's Hunter Wohler has had such an incredible career. And I really hope he gets to play these last couple of games. And I hope he's all right more than anything else, because he's got a future in the NFL ahead of him as well.
I will say this, seeing him walk off is an important factor there.
For sure.
I have a hard time believing he blew out a knee or an Achilles. Obviously, if it's an Achilles, there's no way he's walking off the field.
It looked like it was more of a head thing, head and neck.
And that's what I think too. My guess is concussion.
Yeah, I'm hoping not.
It's totally me just throwing out there a possibility. I don't know, but that would be my guess.
Right.
Which, as terrible as that is, for the sake of his season, if he wants to continue playing this year, it gives him an opportunity to continue playing. The other 2 opportunities, I guess the bigger one that we haven't discussed is Pauling.
Yeah.
He came off with injury, and I don't know if there's a knee there or something, but it looks like there might have been a significant injury to him.
Yeah, definitely an injury to Pauling. And yeah, again, we don't know what the details are of that yet and what it's going to look like. You never want anyone to get hurt. And obviously it's just upsetting to see that going last couple games. And Wohler, especially, just what a career he's had. And I really hope that he can play. But yes, wishing them all well that they got injured yesterday. Justin, the defense obviously played really well. We've talked a lot about Tressel. And I think I think I'm correct in saying that you have called for Tressel and Longo to be gone. I'm not sure where you are on Tressel, but let's talk about that yesterday. The coaching specifically from Mike Tressel and the schemes that he drew up, the pressures that he drew up. We talk a lot about creativity. If we don't get it from Longo, we did get it from Tressel yesterday. We have to give him his flowers. What did you think of the game that he called yesterday?
This is what I've been waiting for from him all season long. Like he finally was showing some pressure. He was actually throwing some stunts out there. Like I haven't seen any of this stuff happening for the last several weeks, and finally we have it done, and it's creating pressure. And It's like, why does it take this long for you to start making these plays? I don't care. Like, these are simple things. Like, you don't have to have NFL talent to create pressure. It helps significantly to have it, but there are plenty of teams out there in the nation that don't have a bunch of NFL guys on their defense, and the defense is still able to create a pass rush. So it's frustrating to me to hear, like, well, they don't have talent. Well, they're talented enough that they're probably a top 35 defense. You should be able to create some level of pressure with the group that they have. And they showed some of that last night. Like, it's weird to me that we have games where it seems like there's nothing there. And then last night we have guys, we sacked him twice. If it wasn't Dillon Gabriel, we probably have like 2 or 3 more. Like, there was a couple of Lowry was coming from the backside that just wasn't quite able to run him down. If it's a average quarterback, he catches him, and that's a sack. They get at least 3 in that game, and probably more. So it's frustrating to see the way that this plays up and not have that on a week-to-week basis. Like, I wish he was just more aggressive in general, because we've seen it in college all the time. Aggression wins. Like, there's very few quarterbacks, unless you're looking at like a first-round quarterback, that are capable of navigating heavy pressure.
It kind of makes me even more upset about the Iowa game now, because there's obviously was an effort issue there, because you're right. I mean, there's no reason that we should have given up 42 points to Iowa. And look at the way we played yesterday. That's clearly Tressel and the entire defense have just got ripped to shreds by Fickell. I'm guessing that Iowa game was a disaster. And they had 2 weeks off. They got to have to bye week, take advantage of that, and the defense really played with a lot of intent. James Husby, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. If you want to be the number 1 team in the country, you have to make the 4th and 9 stop in the 4th quarter. Listen, that's a good point. Right out of the break, right after jump around, like that, there could not have been a better time to pretty much put that game in a very difficult spot by turning the ball over there.
That's a ballsy call.
Dillon Gabriel made a hell of a throw. That was a very tight window. And look, you're right, James. Like, it's obviously that was the one. And really, I would say scoring the touchdown on the previous drive, like to get to 17, that was the time you really had a chance to put the nail in the coffin, at least to an extent. Yeah. But I'm not gonna say anything bad about this defense yesterday. You give up 16 points to Oregon, you've got my vote. Like, I'm not gonna say one bad thing about the defense, because sure, that play would have been nice, but man alive, did this defense play really well.
They couldn't have played better on that play. It wasn't like there was a busted play that they ended up getting that first down.
Gabriel made a great pass.
He threw an absolute dime on that. Like, he made a couple of incredible throws in this game, and that was one of them where an average quarterback just doesn't make that play. That's a Heisman quarterback making a Heisman moment.
From a coaching perspective, from Fickell, I mean, obviously we talked a little bit about Tressel and Longo. How do you feel about the coaching yesterday? I mean, that you had a 2-week break. You're playing the number 1 team in the country. Were you overall happy with the coaching in this game?
I didn't think Longo was terrible in this game. I actually felt like there was some diversity in things that we could have seen. I think you had a quarterback that's just terrible, and that really held you back. But he showed some things. He created some opportunities that normally we don't have there. Now, there were a couple times he went back to the well, which obviously burned us, like the Ashcraft play where Locke rolls out, and we had to just spike it, and it's late in the game, and it's like, this is an important play. And I realized it worked earlier. They absolutely were looking for that play, and they realized that we couldn't throw the ball downfield. Like, part of the reason why Oregon was able to stop us is they knew we weren't going to be throwing the ball more than 10 yards. Well, then you have everyone on defense within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage.
The reason I wanted to talk about this is because I've said multiple times on this show throughout the year that we've been outcoached in a lot of games. We have, but we were not yesterday. I give this coaching staff a ton of credit, because you're right. You said it. The issues we had were offensively with a particular position. It wasn't the entire team. It wasn't the line. There were just bad throws made, bad decisions made, really bad throws. I think Longo called a fairly decent game. I wasn't super happy with everything I saw from him, but I do think it was enough to win the game, because if you if Tyler Van Dyke's in that game or a better quarterback's in that game, we would have won that game. That to me, that's very clear. And of course, an incredible performance from coaching from Tressel. So, yeah, I don't think we were out coached in this game. I think we had the coaching prowess to win this game. So I give it up to Fickell and his team because that was a really good performance as far as their ability to coach and put our players in a position to beat the number one team in the country at home at night on national TV. That's really good. It's really quite sad that we didn't get it done. Jason says, what about the delay of game after the media timeout? So dumb. Yes.
You have to call timeout on that. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I realize it's at the end of the game. This is where you're getting your drive to basically try and win the game. You have to call timeout on that play so that you're not putting yourself already behind the sticks.
Yeah. I mean,
you don't know if you're getting the ball back.
I'm generally of the opinion, don't take timeouts in the second half to save yourself 5 yards. However, when you have an offense that has frankly been that anemic, yes, I think you do take the timeout there to save the 5 yards because
there were only 5 minutes left. Like you
also
expect to get the ball back.
Why are we even in that position? We were coming out of a damn timeout. Like, why are you even in that spot? Was the call late coming in? Was Locke just not was he confused by what he was seeing? Like, that's ridiculous.
I don't know what was
even be in that position.
Did it seem odd to you that it seemed like sideline communication was a problem the entire game? Like, there were constant times where guys are sitting there putting their hands up, and it's like, what is going on here? Why can't you guys figure out what play you're going to run? They had to call timeout several times because of the fact that guys couldn't figure it out.
And if that's the case, then the coaches deserve some criticism for that. Like, if that's really what happened. But all right, so kind of put a bow on football a little bit, Justin. How are you feeling about Nebraska? What do you expect we're going to see now? We just compete with the number one team in the country very well. Nebraska's been in a bit of a tailspin, and Minnesota for that matter. How are you feeling right now? Do you feel like we're going to get to 7 wins? Are you feeling comfortable about that? Like, where's your head at right now heading into the last 2 weeks?
This team has got to come to play, and I think that especially against Nebraska this week, they're looking for a reason to cave and collapse on this season. You have to give it to them. You have to come out and jump on them somehow and get up 14 or whatever right off the bat so that they just crumble and then just run it down their throat the rest of the game. But you've got to find a way to get on top of them and make them break, because I think that's where Nebraska is right now. They started out with a lot of confidence early in the season, and they've fallen off a cliff, over the last several weeks. So you have to lean on them and just kneel on their chest and let them just kill themselves.
We need to take what happened in this game and replicate it with the level of intensity. And Badger Bournemouth fan says, don't think we come out with the same intensity versus Nebraska. That to me is on the coaches. Yeah. They need to make sure that we do. Because if we do come out with the same intensity, especially on the defensive side of the ball, we're going to beat this team, and we're going to beat them well. So I put a lot of pressure for this game on Luke Fickell and Mike Tressel and Phil Longo. This is where they make their money. You just came off a crushing defeat through a 3-game stretch that was brutal, it was awful. And now we've got 2 winnable games against rival teams, certainly the last one. This is on them. They have to get this team ready to play, because if we play like we did against Iowa, Nebraska's beating us, hands down. If we play like we did against Oregon, Nebraska is going to lose. That, to me, is all on the coaches. I want to see the defensive intensity. You've got nothing left here. The next 2 weeks, leave it all on the field. I mean, I don't think we're going to see the coaching staff in its entirety next year again. This is the last 2 games for the staff in the way that it's formed. This has to be a game where you bring everything. And more than anything, I want to see that kind of defensive intensity and that kind of defensive coaching, the preparation that they had. Now, I know they had a bye week, but you should be able to do that against Nebraska. Yes, it's a road game. We've played well overall in road games, except Iowa, disaster. So I have a lot of high hopes, and I do expect us to get to 7 wins. I do think we can win the next 2 games. I will be very disappointed if we don't, and I will be if we lose to Minnesota, that's just I can't handle that.
I will say, going into this game, Nebraska is not great at running the football, which is our obvious weakness. So if we can kind of hold them in check, I feel good about us in that being able to hold down their offense. So it's definitely a game that we should be able to get ourselves in good field position and get ourselves in good situations to be able to make good things happen. That is something that we haven't had since the winning streak, which will hopefully be able to get us some confidence back. Like this is a game that could be a bit of a get right game, because I do think that Nebraska is not exactly a confident team right now. And the defense for them, which started out so hot to start the season, has kind of lost its way a little bit over the last, month or so.
Yeah. It's going to be really important that we get the 7 wins, and I think we can do it. And hopefully we start with this week against Nebraska. Turning to more positive news, on Friday night, the Badger basketball team got a massive victory, 103 points on the board in what might be the worst officiated game in history of college basketball. My God, those officials were horrendous. They literally blew the whistle on damn near every possession. It was a disaster. What was not a disaster was the performance by Greg Gard and his team. John Tonje looks like an absolute stud, 41 points. John Blackwell continues to improve and get better. There's a lot of pieces on this team, and we'll start with John Tonje, because what an incredible performance. He looks like he's taken he's not at a step because he didn't play with us last year, but he kind of looks like he could have a Johnny Davis type season out there. I mean, if this continues, if he's putting up these kind of points, he looked calm, collected, in control the entire game, barely even broke a sweat. Yep. It looks like he was just looking like real special. And that's exciting. When you look at the future of this team this season, there's a lot of things to be excited about. But John Tonje, clearly at this point, player of the season. And my God, unbelievable performance.
Played great. The one thing I will say is I could do without seeing another one of his Euro steps. But other than that, he was really, really good in this game. Listen, that type of efficiency will carry this team. Obviously, it's you can't expect him to have that type of game, but you're not also going to be playing Arizona, a team of that caliber, more than maybe once or twice the remainder of the season. I will say this. Overall, there's some very promising things that we're seeing from this team. Number one, I think defensively, they're better than they've been. There's still the weakness of this team is still on the interior, but I think they're better on the perimeter than they were last year. I will say free throw shooting, give yourself opportunities to have an advantage over the other team, and it feels like that's going to be something that they maintain more the rest of the season. If you can be an 80-plus free throw shooting percent team, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the other team, and it can get in their head if they're not shooting well. So Wisconsin needs to continue to hit those at a high level, because that's your point differential. Like, that is going to create games where you win instead of by 5, you win by 9, because you're hitting those free throws. And that's a big deal late in the game. Like that, those are the type of things that get teams to implode when they can't rely on you to kind of give them opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about Tonje and his future and the season and his ceiling, I think it really puts us in a great position going into the rest of the season, because we've got, as we've said many times, shooters all over the floor, which make a real big difference. And there's a lot that we can take from that. A great performance. You mentioned the front court and some of our issues defending down low. Obviously, the front court was the problem in this game. Like, if we would have lost, it would have been because the rebounding. I think we were out rebounded 52-28. That is atrocious, absolutely atrocious. Now, what I would say is this: we talk a lot about Steven Crowell, and Steven Crowell is who Steven Crowell is. What I'm most upset about when it comes to the rebounding is blocking out, especially at the 4 position. Yeah. That's Winter and Amos. I think they both played poorly. And they're young 4s that have to be more productive at that position, especially rebounding the ball. It's all there's no one's attacking the ball. And that's the thing. No one's immediately looking to block someone out. The number of times that I saw Xavier Amos stand in the lane, you're in the lane, the ball goes up to be shot. He's watching the ball,
put yourself
and he's
on a
not
body.
moving. I'm like, buddy, you are a 4. You are in the front court. You're in the paint. You are responsible for creating this rebound. It's not just like, well, let's just hope it doesn't go in. Go attack the ball. Attack it. Find someone, put a body on them, and make a play for the rebound. That is something that I think can be corrected. I think
that can get better.
Because they're going to be doing a lot of drills with that. Like, that's definitely something that Greg Gard identified that has to improve for this game. I I think that now we've got a few, like, not a big break, but we've got an easier game against UT Rio Grande or something coming up. Like, let's take the time to improve on those things, because if that doesn't improve, we're going to lose games because we got out rebounded. And I know that we're never going to see this amazing front court defense because we don't have massive rim protection. We know that, and that's fine. But rebounding from the 4 position, that to me is unacceptable, and it has to improve.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's kind of where I'm at with this team overall. Is you need to find ways to maximize the things that are your weaknesses, and that's definitely a weakness for this team. Like, it's going to be a problem potentially if you do want to make it to the postseason. You're going to have to find ways, because there are going to be teams that are better rebounding teams than Wisconsin. And you can't rely on yourself to just be able to shoot your way through every team, because there's going to be teams that are capable of scoring with you. So at some point, you're going to have to be able to just be physical and play your butts off and get the hustle plays. And there were some of those. Like, how many times did Klesmit end up on the floor in this game?
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of these guys, Tonje ended up on the floor a few times. Like, those guys are playing for the loose balls. You got to do it on the rebounding side too. Like, how much do we win this game by if we say cut that rebounding differential in half? Suddenly you win this game by probably almost 30.
25 points. Like, we crushed this team. The offensive, 52-28. I can't even
remember. So much of them
that.
Staying in the game was second chance points.
Absolutely. I mean, and to the point where I really thought we were going to lose the game because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when they tied it up, like, again, that just shows the sort of ability of this team to be able to fight back and not get in a situation where, okay, they just tied it up, they're going on a run, they're one of the best teams in America, and we were able to kind of push that through. I think Greg Gard did a great job. I mean, he has definitely reinvented the offense a bit. Ryan's been talking about that a lot, and kind of more of a bit of a pro style. Definitely, much faster, playing with a ton more pace, as evidenced by the 103 points we put up. That's really impressive. So I think Greg Gard deserves credit. I know that you're not a guy that likes to give him a lot of credit, so I will do it. I think he deserves a lot of credit for where they are right now. Justin, tell me what you think this win means for the season. Like, I mean, no one was expecting this. You certainly weren't expecting this. I actually did pick a win, but in reality, I kind of thought we were still going to lose. What does this mean for the season now? Like, you've had a pretty negative outlook on our ability to make the tournament. Like, do you feel differently now? This is a big win. That's for the resume.
Sure. Well, I've said all along that I'm in prove it mode. Like, you've got to prove to me that they can be consistent. So for me, it's not a matter of I don't think they can do it. It's a matter of you got to go out there and prove it. Last year, I bought in, and they almost blew it. Like, the second half of the season, they're 3-8. So for me, it's just a matter of you need to kind of put your money where your mouth is a little bit on this, and I'll give you the credit that you deserve if you continue to play well. And if that's the case, then so be it. We've never really had an issue with Gard from an X's and O's standpoint. The coaching side of it has been fine. It's always been talent acquisition with him.
I don't know. I think we've had plenty of issues, including you. I think we've had issues with his X's.
Last year, there definitely were some issues with some of the things that were going, and I think his substitution patterns were obviously a problem too last year. So, I mean, there were some things that needed to be addressed this offseason. And I think we could still say it. Like, there are guys that realistically shouldn't be on this roster. Like, if we're playing big boy basketball, you need to stop being the nice guy and put guys on this roster that are capable of being productive for you. There's a couple of them that are on there that are wasted scholarships that, quite frankly, they played in this game because you needed fouls. But they're guys who are probably not going to play much this year, and you don't feel like they're going to play. Like, you can't tell me that Gard doesn't feel. I love Hodges. Yeah, I'm sure he's a great kid. He's not going to play. So that's a wasted scholarship that you have on there, where you could have filled it with a body of somebody who maybe provides some minutes for you.
I mean, you're always going to have misses, though. Like, you're always going to have misses. But speaking of people who are playing this season, Badger and Bournemouth Cherries fan says, what do you think of Janicki? What are your thoughts on Janicki so far, Justin? Like, talk about a guy that none of us had him in our expected rotation before the season. He's definitely in it. He's definitely getting playing time. He's in like the 8/9 man rotation right now. And I think he's got a nice start. What are your thoughts on him and his game and his ability to be a big part of this team?
I think he's a solid player. I think watching this game, I did not see him get attacked defensively, which tells me that he's not a problem. I think he moves well enough, and he's a good enough shooter that he's capable of keeping himself out on the floor. Now, obviously, athletically, he's somewhat limited, but that's fine. Like, his game is he's an outside shooter and a guy who plays with energy, and that's going to carry him to a certain extent and allow him to provide good minutes. If he can be just a guy that comes in and maybe provides a couple of threes and plays some solid defense and gives some good effort, that's fine. That's a great depth piece to have.
Yeah. I agree completely. I think that he's a pleasant surprise on this team, which is good. He does have the shooting ability, but you're right about the energy. I think he really plays with that. And that's one thing that I'm a little bit upset with other players about. So obviously, we talked about Tonje and how great he is, but I want to hear from you, and I'll go first on this one, who you're not happy with right now. Like, who do you feel like needs to take the biggest step, make some improvements? So I got to say, Xavier Amos, to me, I'm just not there on him right now. And I'm really upset. Like, obviously we hit the portal with John Tonje. That was clear. That might be one of the best portal additions in the country by the end of the season. But Xavier Amos, to me, just isn't. He's just not playing tough enough. He's not playing physical enough. And I'm not saying he's a physical guy, because he's more of a stretch kind of four as well. But like the locking out ability and just his shot selection, I think, was a bit shaky at times. So I haven't been overly impressed with him. And I have to say that Nolan Winter did not have a good game. And I think he doesn't really want to be a front court rim protector kind of guy. But he's going to have to be more physical, and hopefully he can develop and play a little better there. But to me, Xavier Amos, definitely just someone my eyes are on him, and I'm like, I don't know how he's really going to fare this year.
Yeah, he wins my Chris Middleton I don't understand momentum shot selection award, where he jacks up a 30-footer like 5 seconds into the shot clock, and you're like, what are you thinking? Like, that is an absolutely horrible shot to be putting up at this point in the shot clock. I have no aversion to threes, but get a good shot. Don't be 10 feet behind the line when you're somebody who is not exactly a knockdown three-point shooter. Like, I don't think he's a bad three-point shooter, but he's not a guy that I look at and I'm like, I want him putting it up every time he touches the ball. The only guy that I would probably say that right now is, I would probably say out of this team, Blackwell. Klesmit, I'll give it for the most part. Every once in a while, he'll put one up and I'm like, you're not in rhythm. Don't put that shot up. But
I got no issue.
For the most part, he's got a green light.
Yeah, Klesmit has a green light because he can go nuclear at any moment, and so I got no issue with that. But you're right. I mean, Amos doesn't need to be doing that. So that's definitely the issue without with me. Kevin Brown says, without the free throws, is it the same game and outcome? Gosh, Justin, let's talk about the officiating for a minute. Holy crap. Yeah. What the hell were they doing? I mean, I understand you need to send a message. I understand like the early in the game, you have some calls, you try to keep it tight. You're making sure that it doesn't get out of control. But I mean, at some point, the officials need to get together and say, hey, can we just like chill out? I mean, if you touch somebody, they were calling the foul. I think the outcome is still the same, Kevin. I think we still win the game.
Arizona benefited from it too.
Tonje certainly doesn't have 41 points without the officials calling what they did. But then again, like we also got a ton of fouls called on us, and we bailout type calls.
I think we had more, didn't we? It was like 32-31.
I don't remember what the total count was, because obviously both teams were in the double bonus early in both halves. So I think the outcome is still the same. I don't think we score 103 points. That's for sure. I think the score is definitely probably in like the 80-ish range for us. But I think we outplayed them no doubt. Mike 78 says, give Amos some time. He should get better. That's fair, Mike. That's fair. Like I think it's my point is, like, right now, I expected him to be the starting four for this team. And then when we heard that Winter was getting those reps and he was going to be starting at 4, I think that gave us some cause for concern, because Winter was supposed to be the backup 5. And I just think that when you're bringing Winter in at 4, that means Amos isn't the guy, which that's what it looks like. And that's what's most concerning, because once again, we just don't have, we needed that 4 position. And we also need a 5 that's physical. And I was hoping that Winter could kind of be that. I mean, it's just Amos just, in order for this team to be successful, and I think we still can be, he has to be better. And I think that's been a little bit of a disappointment to me. But I'm all for it, Mike. I'm all for him getting better, and I hope he does.
See, to me, he's a little bit of a black hole. Like, every time he touched the ball, he put it up. And the other part of it is that it's not within the flow of the offense. Like, the shots that he's putting up are possession killers. And he plays kind of like a pickup basketball player, where it's just like he doesn't really seem to have an understanding of feel for where the moment is. And that is a problem. Like, that is a thing that can be an issue the entire season, where you take shots at ill-advised shots at bad times in the game. And I watched, like I brought up the Chris Middleton remark that I made is valid. Like, that can swing a game. Like, if you come down and jack up an ill-advised 3 early in the shot clock and it leads to a breakout the other way, that's a 6-point swing. Like, you could potentially put yourself in a real bind with situations like that. That's a guy who needs to kind of understand within the flow of the game where his offense needs to come from. Now, Tonje does a pretty good job of that when he's out there. He understands how to get himself into good situations. And I really didn't take too much issue. He had a couple of heat check shots, but for the most part, his offense was pretty consistent with him attacking the rim.
I mean, he's allowed to have with the game he had. He can take whatever heat check he wants in that game.
He earned it in that game.
That's for
and
sure.
He basically knocked it down almost every time.
Most definitely. But what a massive victory for the Badgers to get that win against Arizona. A couple little light. They've the Rio Grande this week. They've got a Greenbrier tip off, and then December is really going to be a difficult month. We played Marquette and Butler and a couple Big Ten games in the month of December. So that's going to really be a difficult. We're going to Illinois. We're going to Marquette. We're going to Butler. That's that 3-game stretch at Marquette, at Illinois, at Butler. I mean, if we win one of those, I think that would be good. That's a very, very difficult stretch. But going into this, there's a lot of positivity that's going to be coming from this team, and hopefully we can actually make some things happen. Yeah.
Breaking news here.
Oh boy, breaking news. Justin's breaking news.
Mason Sensala, Badgers just fired Phil Longo.
I mean, this needs to be confirmed. We're gonna spend
it
some
is
time talking
confirmed by Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports, saying Coach Fickell announces coaching change. OC Phil Longo out in Madison.
Holy cow! I mean, that's wow.
That's not shocking to me. Like, I think we knew that like. Here's the deal. It's nothing against Phil Longo. There was a disconnect between these two in terms of what their ideology in terms of what they wanted out of offense. And I think that we saw that the more going on, it was really, I think Longo was super uncomfortable with what the expectation was of what was expected of him. And I think the more I watch Fickell, I think I have a pretty good feel for what he expects out of the offense. And that's that he wants a guy who's going to have a really sharp running game and is going to take his shots in the passing game and feel things out in a situationally in a good, like, just understanding of where the game is at and what shots are doing. So I think that honestly, this is a big deal. This is I got it wrong. It's time for me to move on and get somebody that fits what I want. And I think we thought that this was going to happen. Like, I had heard some things on this.
Yeah, so we both heard some things, but I honestly did not think it was going to happen.
I expected it after the season.
This is surprising. So yes, I mean, listen, it's funny. We were just about to end the show. We're not ending the show now. We're going to talk about this. I mean, this is crazy. Like, so yeah, Phil Longo out as offensive coordinator of the Badgers, 56 minutes into the Bucky report. So we've got some time to talk about it now. I am surprised, Justin. I think that it puts us, like, first of all, do you have any sense of who's going to be calling the plays at this point? I mean,
I have no idea. If I have to take a guess, I'd say Kenny Guyton.
Yeah.
That's who I would expect to be the guy, because he did a little bit of it at Arkansas, which will be interesting. Really, the bigger issue is here. You're not going to fix what ails this offense over the remainder of the season. It is what it is. Like, your goal is to maximize whatever you can, but there's going to have to be an actual offensive change in the offseason to fix the problems. So we may be able to be more productive than what we've been, but I wouldn't expect – you're not going to come out, tomorrow and suddenly or this next week and suddenly be like, all right, we're dropping 40 bombs. Like, the offense is still the offense. It's just there's going to be some changes to play calling.
So now, are you feeling more or less confident, or how do you feel now about Mabry? Because to me, I feel like now I feel like
I think it's far more likely
he's going to start. Yeah,
it's far more likely he starts.
Because at this point, you got to think like I mean, gosh, to do with 2 games left in the season. I mean, look, that's a bold move by Luke Fickell. And
let me throw
say,
something at you here real quick. Do you think that this means they don't have their guy for the remainder of the season?
Yeah, I think that's true. Because we had talked about, like, if Longo's out at the end of the year, we probably have a guy, but I think you're right. I don't think we do have the guy, because now, you're in a situation where
we're going to start a search.
Yep.
And we want to be able to get on top of this before everyone else.
And jumping on it now and starting to have those conversations with the guys that you want before their season's over. Yeah, get out ahead of it. I like it. Like, this is a bold move by Fickell. I have to say I like it. Like, clearly all year we have been complaining about Phil Longo and the offense and how incredibly inefficient it's been. And, we said coming into the season that we're talking about 28, 29, 30 points a game was what we wanted to see. And instead we're nowhere near that.
Yeah.
Look, Phil Longo has now been the offensive coordinator of this team for 23 games. And we really have not seen anything that we expected to see from him, other than a little bit in the LSU game. And it's going to maybe some of this 3-game stretch where we were 3-0 against Northwestern and Rutgers and Purdue. But all we've seen from Phil Longo, Justin, is underperforming, not being creative. And you talk about all the talk that's been around this program. Barry Alvarez making comments he's made, and ex-Badgers. Like, there was clearly a message that was like, look, we're not happy with this. And fans haven't been happy with this at all. Like, I think it was important to make this step. Doing it now instead of the end of the season, I'm okay with it. Like I said, it's a bold move. And if it ultimately, what I feel more comfortable about is next year, because at this point, we know we need a new offense. We know our offense has been sputtering and has been, frankly, the reason we've lost a lot of the games that we played this year. So I will give it to Luke Fickell. We're obviously just reacting to this news live right now. But I'm okay with it, because if we need a change, it also gives this team a spark, Justin. Like, all of a sudden now you got 2 games left to go, because it's not just about what Fickell was thinking. I'm sure the guys in the locker room were thinking. So it energizes this team,
which is
going
also
into,
why
again,
I think Mabry's likely to be playing, because
yeah,
I think. Listen, I'll just be blunt. I'll be shocked if last night Locke didn't lose that locker room. Like, his level of play, I will absolutely say that there were people in that locker room, based off the body language of everybody there, they felt like he wasn't capable of taking them home. And I think that's at that point, you have to make the change. Like, you can't let everyone else get down because you're starting somebody that they don't believe in.
Yeah. Shocking news coming right here. But listen, let's see what happens now. This is gonna be an interesting week. Obviously, we'll find out who's going to be calling the plays. We'll obviously find out if Mabry's going to start. I think if he does start, I think it'll be it'll be announced early in the week. I mean, it could have come as early as tomorrow at Fickell's press conference. He's obviously, tomorrow's press conference with Fickell is going to be something that's heavily watched, of course, because we're going to find out about the play call. We're going to find out about Mabry. We're going to find out what's going on. And ultimately, don't forget, you said it earlier, this Locke is Longo's guy, as is Landon Locke, our only quarterback in the next class. So, like, there's, all of a sudden the quarterback position and a lot of the offensive players, we have to rethink all of it now as to how heavy we go in the portal this year, how interesting it's going to be, for even the next 2 weeks. Absolutely big news coming here live on the Bucky Report. Phil Longo out as offensive coordinator. I'm glad I was literally about to just say, okay, last comments, and here we go. Now we got this going on. I'm sure that it's very likely that Justin and I will be joining Ryan soon to talk about this as well. Because I know,
I'm sure this is going to completely catch him off guard.
And then we'll probably have an emergency pod, as Uncultured Barbarian says, emergency pod from Ryan now. Yeah, probably. And that's probably what Justin and I will be doing right after this. Super, super interesting with this. But Justin, final thoughts before we go ahead and actually close this show, unless there's other new breaking news. Anything else about these last couple games or about Phil Longo at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think we learned that this is just one of those situations where we had best intentions with making a change to something that was going to be more dynamic for us. And I think we learned a lesson that with something like this, a lot of it comes down to, it's not just a scheme change. You have to have the right person running it. And My understanding of what I saw from Phil Longo is just that I think he's good enough against teams that aren't defensive stalwarts. I just don't know if he's a good enough defensive coordinator to be able to do it against teams that are really talented defensively, unless he's got NFL guys littered all over the place.
Yeah. Well, what an absolute crazy weekend for the Badgers. We beat Arizona, we lose to Oregon, and Phil Longo is no longer the offensive coordinator of the Wisconsin Badgers. Wow, what a week it's going to be, and we'll be back to preview the Nebraska game. We'll certainly be back to talk about this. Go check out Locked On Badgers. I imagine we're going to be on there pretty soon to talk more about Phil Longo. It's going to be a very interesting week for the Badgers. As always, Justin, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.